Okay, Ron, let's talk about one of the most bizarre and chaotic royal moments that will never go away, Prince Archie's birth. This isn't because of the baby, but rather because of the circus that surrounded his arrival. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry were able to turn a royal birth, which is typically handled with precision and tradition, into a bewildering mess that was full of contradictions, secrecy, and what many now believe was a full-blown cover-up. I'll say that, like many others, I initially thought the Getty photos of the pillow falling behind the skirt might have been photoshopped, but Getty Images is incredibly trustworthy. The official story was straightforward. Meghan went into labor early in the morning, gave birth, and the palace made an announcement later that day. However, when you start peeling back the layers, that's just the version we were spoon-fed. Nothing adds up. Consider the timing. Meghan reportedly went into labor early in the morning, but the palace didn't explain why to the public for about 12 hours, which made the situation even more perplexing when they finally did. Harry and Meghan's public relations staff had already pledged to notify the media when she gave birth, so you may believe it was just a private moment for them and not a huge deal. When reporters inquired about it, the palace responded with a carefully worded statement that sidestepped the actual problem and placed the blame on the media for misinterpreting their timing. The situation worsened during the brief period between the palace's announcement that Meghan was in labor and the Instagram post announcing the baby's birth. Journalists asked directly if the baby had already been born, and palace officials denied it. That isn't a misunderstanding. The point is that Harry and Meghan lied, the palace lied on their behalf, and if the monarchy isn't supposed to do anything, it's lie about the fundamentals of succession. People can argue over whether Meghan used a surrogate, whether she wore a moon bump, or whether any of the theories circulating are true, but those details, while juicy, aren't even the point. Dan has been beating this drum for years. Probably the first mainstream journalist to point out how strange this whole situation was. Wooden was an executive editor at The Sun back in 2019. He even forced Buckingham Palace to answer 8 direct questions about Archie's birth on the record, an almost unprecedented move that should tell you how shaken they were. The palace knew something wasn't right. Dan's primary hypothesis was that the announcement was purposefully postponed to coincide with the palace denied it, of course, but when every move seems to help the Sussexes' American PR game, it's hard not to raise an eyebrow. If you're a royal, this isn't about attacking Meghan for the sake of attacking her, it's about transparency. He pointed out how the timing of everything lined up perfectly with the 8 a.m. New York shows like CBS This Morning, where Gayle King just so happens to be a friend of Meghan's. You cannot play the "we want privacy" card while also holding picture shoots and releasing carefully chosen documentaries if you are a taxpayer-funded marriage with a child in the line of succession. This was not merely poor public relations, it was a complete media catastrophe. And if the intention was to preserve their privacy, it failed miserably, as no one now believes the tale they told, the chronology, or the announcements, not even the pregnancy bump, and it's quite tough to regain public trust once you lose it, particularly as a royal. Meghan's pregnancy turned into a separate plot point. When the internet first discovered it, it was enormous, but the next day it was nearly flat. Videos of her tummy folding when she sat down began to circulate, sparking wild debate about whether it was a moon bump or a padded prosthetic. Rather than providing clarity, Harry and people weren't just guessing, they were growing to believe that something was being concealed. The mainstream media didn't want to get involved because it was too controversial and too near to conspiracy, but that's when journalism lost its edge as Meghan went farther into concealment. The role is to ask people uncomfortable questions, not to shield them from them. Meghan's pregnancy had a ton of questions, yet major media outlets avoided most of them. Dan Wooten, for example, was prepared to press the palace, but when they did, their responses were generic and robotic, never getting to the heart of the lies. One particular instance caught people's attention. Meghan was purportedly in labor with baby Lopet, but at the same time, a video of her dancing, smiling, and appearing totally at ease was released. The timeline didn't make sense, and even people who hadn't previously questioned the first pregnancy began to wonder, requesting, "Hold on, what is going on here?" Respected Daily Telegraph associate editor Camilla Tominey wrote about it, but she never once thought that the bump might be fake. When asked about it, she reacted as though it were beneath her. This is the issue with journalists who act too respectable to look into real inconsistencies. If the palace had followed tradition, nothing would have gone wrong if you had just stated the truth, or even half of the truth. But once you start lying, everything you do seems suspicious. What's even worse is how the palace handled Harry and Meghan's communication plan. It was chaotic and announcements were delayed. The palace once blamed a technical problem for failing to notify the press in 2019, on time after emails allegedly went unsent and timelines didn't match. If phones don't exist, it wasn't only a blunder. Then there was the Instagram post, which was how the world officially learned about Archie's birth, not through a formal royal statement or a traditional press conference, but through a brief window of time when reporters asked if Meghan had given birth. Or the palace flatly denied it, knowing full well that it was a clumsy cover-up. Buckingham Palace, the symbol of order and protocol, suddenly looked disorganized and weak. Harry and Meghan's team attempted to frame everything around privacy, but when your child is in line for the throne, privacy becomes a matter of public trust. You're not just a couple, you're an institution, and you don't get to rewrite royal tradition just because you feel like it. The fact that the baby was already born is the part that crosses the line, because that's not a spin, that's just lying. The whole situation left royal watchers perplexed, journalists frustrated, and the public suspicious. This wasn't just a botched media strategy, it became a symbol of how strained things had become between Harry, Meghan, and the crown. Even worse, they dragged the palace down with them. Buckingham Palace appeared to be following their lead rather than setting the tone, and as a result, it lost credibility. Why is this so annoying? After Archie was born, the number of questions continued to grow. One major one concerned the photo call at Windsor Castle, where Harry and Meghan presented their baby to the world in a carefully planned moment with no outside press and no genuine spontaneity. This could have been a moment of celebration, unity, and even modernity, but instead it turned into a masterclass in how not to handle royal communication. It was scheduled for 12:40 p.m. UK time, which coincidentally coincides with the 7:40 a.m. broadcast hour on American morning shows. Are the Sussexes more concerned with their US media presence than their function in the British monarchy, or was this really a coincidence? Wouldn't question the palace directly if the picture call time was chosen to coincide with American news programs. A chilly predetermined no. The family's trip to Windsor to introduce Archie to the Queen and Prince Philip was the basis for the timing, but even that didn't work out. Why would one of the most anticipated public moments, a royal photo op, be arranged around a private family visit? It seems strange, as if someone was working backwards from a US media schedule and feigning that it was just royal logistics. Another mystery, where was Archie actually born? Harry talked about the experience in eloquent detail, describing how wonderful Meghan was during labor, but the palace would not confirm the birthplace. This in and of itself sparked rumors because every royal baby before him had their birthplace confirmed, so why hide this if it was just a typical hospital birth? The refusal to provide an explanation only heightened curiosity, not decreased it. Then there was the line of succession. As being a direct descendant in the royal line, Prince Harry, Archie's son, is legally documented. Royal birth announcements are usually marked with information like the attending physician, the hospital, and a statement outside the palace. But with this birth, the customary sign-offs were either late, ambiguous, or non-existent. Proper announcement procedures and formal acknowledgement from the palace are crucial, but none of that happened. Received a filtered Instagram message with a delayed press release, which further complicated matters. When reporters demanded clarification, palace press officers became irate, and at one point even claimed that the announcement was delayed because of an email malfunction. At first, the palace attempted to pretend that nothing was out of the ordinary, but the contradictions were mounting. One outlet was informed that Meghan had gone into labor, while another was informed that she had already given birth. Meghan and Harry wanted to modernize the monarchy, but they ended up bringing chaos. They didn't seem to understand, or perhaps cared, that when you wear the crown's weight, you don't get to control the narrative completely, and drew the table when you do. So they said an email didn't go out in time. If this had happened once, people might have let it go, but the entire situation was tangled in inconsistency after inconsistency. Tried the harsh retaliation. In addition to raising eyebrows, their actions caused a void of trust, which led to the explosion of hypotheses. Some people thought Meghan had employed a surrogate, while others thought she sported a false bump. More extreme interpretations claimed that Archie was a borrowed child, or that he didn't exist at all. These beliefs weren't made up. Rather, they were the result of the couple's inability to communicate openly and the palace's reluctance to enforce it. It was always about the truth, not hate, and the truth is still lacking. Beyond all the conjecture, we do know that Meghan and Harry lied, the palace supported them, and the public was left with an unsolved royal mystery.